Welcome to Unlocking Your Truth, another podcast by Dr. Leslie Phillips.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to another edition of Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie and with Corey. Corey usually likes to say hello at this point.
Oh, hello, everybody. No, I've got you in both ears for some reason.
Well, Unlocking Your Truth, if you don't know, is a talk show. We broadcast on 101.7 FM across the Fraser Valley from the unceded territory of the Stolo Nation. We also post the podcast of the show on drlesliephillips.com, and we've recently started live streaming on our Facebook group, Awaken Your Psychic Abilities. Unlocking Your Truth is a talk show about metaphysics and spirituality, and every week we have a different topic. And we really like to educate and inspire you under that general umbrella. And we love when you post your questions and when you send in your questions to us. So tonight's show, the topic that we've selected is top 10 questions about spirit guides. And if your question about spirit guides isn't amongst my top 10 questions list, then I invite you to, if you're live streaming on Facebook, to post your questions in the comments underneath the live stream. And if you're listening in any other way, you can email info@drlesliephillips.com.
Yay.
So my very first question that I'm going to answer is, what are spirit guides?
Those are people that guide spirits around.
No.
Bartenders.
No. But those are both very good answers. Spirit guides, in a nutshell, are non-physical beings, or they tend to be non-physical beings that support us in our evolution. And they either do it with us on an individual basis, or even on a planetary basis, or a species level basis. Now, I just use the term non-physical beings, which means beings without bodies. It's actually is also possible for somebody who's in a body to be to act kind of like a spirit guide. And so, for example, if you have like an ascended master who is alive on the planet in a physical body, they are so spiritually aware, it's actually also possible for them to be guiding people and communicating with people as spirit that way as well. So that's question number one. Now, question number two, what are some examples of spirit guides? What do you think, Corey? What are some examples of spirit guides?
All kinds, healing guides, all kinds, anything that you need, you could have a spirit guide for.
Yeah, that's true.
Everything you need, masters, archetypes. I know the listeners will probably laugh at this one, Big Bird, because Big Bird's one of my spirit guides. Sesame Street Big Bird.
So you're right, like ascended masters. And these ascended masters are beings who are very evolved and enlightened, who have previously lived in a body on planet Earth, usually many bodies, because it takes a process of multiple incarnations to reach that level of enlightenment. Ascended masters are people like Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, and others who've had the experience of being in a physical body and who have mastered the physical realm. So they are really wonderful for us to talk to about our human experience and how to be alive in a physical body, be a spiritual consciousness alive in a physical body, and how to handle all the stuff that goes on here. Angels is another type of being that can be a spirit guide. And angels, while they can have physical manifestations, they're on a different evolutionary track. And their evolutionary track does not involve having a physical body. So they are non-physical beings who've never lived a lifetime in a physical body. Now, there are some exceptions to that, which are that they can manifest in a physical form in order to help somebody, for example. But they're not on the same evolutionary track as we and our ascended masters, because their focus is on the non-physical. Now, galactic beings, highly evolved species, so beings who have lived lifetimes in other realities on other planets and who have gone through the awakening process and therefore know a bit more than we do about what we're going through. And especially at the moment, because the Earth is going through such a massive shift, there are many of these galactic beings available to help us, and there are different ones from different planetary systems, like the Pleiadians, the Arcturians, the Sirians, the Essassani, and others. There's lots of them about, and they're all many of them very focused on us at the moment. Is there a question, Corey?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes.
So does a spirit guide have to be in spirit to be a spirit guide? Is that it? Or are you talking, when you talk about the Pleiadians and people on other planets, are you talking civilizations on other planets, people that have passed on?
So in our linear human way of thinking, we think you are either in spirit or not in spirit, when the truth of the matter is you're in spirit all the time. You are a multi-dimensional consciousness, and a physical incarnation is just one aspect of a multi-dimensional consciousness. So we're all in spirit all the time, actually, and then we have these things called incarnations, and we encase our consciousness in them, and then we can only see things in a certain, narrow perspective that comes through being in the physical body. So I don't use the strict definition of in spirit versus not in spirit necessarily, but these are beings that have access to their multidimensional consciousness in a way which is beyond our current imagination. Let's say it that way.
Oh, good answer.
So, and then let's talk about, still answering this question of what are some examples of guides, animal totems. Animal totems. And I think of that more like in a way, the collective energy of a species, because all animals have certain characteristics. You can think about, I don't know, the squirrel gathering their nuts and burying their nuts. You can think about...
like a rabbit today.
Yes, you can think about, the beaver building a dam, or the lioness hunting. Different animals have different characters and characteristics, and which we can learn from and which can reflect back at us certain aspects of our own character. So animals can serve as guides to humans as well, by showing up in our reality and teaching us different things. Yeah. Now, there's probably some overlap in this one with the galactic beings, but interdimensional and higher dimensional beings. So there are groups of beings who may not be associated with a particular planetary system. For example, the Hathors. The Hathors are a collective group of beings who've been serving the earth for a long time, thousands of years. They tend to be operating in higher dimensional levels, but they're not necessarily associated with a particular planet. And the planet herself, Gaia, the consciousness of the planet, can be a kind of a guide. You can communicate and get information with the planetary consciousness. And the Devic realm, which is a part of the planetary consciousness. And then we would include in that fairies, pardon?
Leprechauns,
elves, brownies, sprites, you name it, all of the nereids, ungines, different kinds of nature spirits. And then other sort of groupings of collective consciousness. And when I'm saying groupings of collective consciousness, sometimes some of these channeled entities are a group consciousness as opposed to an individual consciousness.
Yeah. Since we're all spirit still in essence, would that not make me my own spirit guide?
That is an excellent question, and that was going to be question number 10. Can I be my own guide? And the answer to that is absolutely. And actually, sometimes when a guide shows up, it's just another aspect of your own consciousness. Your future self can be a guide to you. Another personality that is one of your personalities can be a guide to you. Your higher self, your soul, your oversoul are always guiding you. Your inner voice is always talking to you. And so absolutely, other aspects of your own multidimensional consciousness can be your guides and often are your guides. And it's actually in some cases where people are channeling higher consciousness, they're channeling an aspect of themselves. Sometimes not, but sometimes they actually are. So that's a really good question.
I know my sister, I did some healing, like an internal healing workshop with myself once. And I had screens up, huge screens. And my healing guides showed up there. And one of them was my sister, who's still in body. And it was very interesting that because we don't have a great relationship, but yet she turned up as my healing guide.
Well, and actually, if you want to take it to that level, everyone that shows up in your life can act as a guide, because everyone that shows up in your life is reflecting something back at you, right? If you're in resistance to that person, they're reflecting a message to you at something within you that is in a state of resistance and not in a state of flow. So we can look at everybody, and every situation in our lives as offering us guidance and opportunities for healing.
You didn't mention clerical people.
Clerical people?
Yeah, like priests, ministers, pastors.
People like me who sit and talk to people all day, giving them guidance. I know I didn't, but that's also another type of guide, isn't it? Yeah. All right. So my next question number 3 on my list, I get, people ask is, does everybody have a guide? Yes. Very short answer to that one. We all have a team of spiritual helpers. We all have so much support, more than we can even know from the consciousness that we are in a body. But yes, everyone has a guide. And question number 4, will my guide be with me throughout my life? Depends. Some will and others won't. So some guides, and we label these as guardian angels sometimes, they are guides that oversee the entire lifetime. In fact, there are guides who will oversee you through all your incarnations. over thousands and thousands of years in many, many different bodies. But there are other guides who cycle in and cycle out, who will be there for part of the time, but not the whole time. And that just really depends, because in any point in your life, you are going through different things. And so, for example, if you had toothache, you wouldn't go to the car mechanic to help you. If that was the phase you were in, I'm having toothache and I'm trying to cure my tooth, you wouldn't go to a car mechanic. And the world of energy beings is a bit like this, because just as we're all evolving and we all have our interests, many of them have their interests, and they are all evolving too. The whole of the cosmic consciousness is in a constant state of change and evolution. And so, just like when you have a human relationship or a human partnership, somebody will come into your life and you might be in relationship with them for a year or 5 years or 10 years, right? And it really all depends. If you're moving along the same track, then you'll stay together. It's the same thing with a guide. If you are both going in the same path, the same direction, interested in the same things, or there's something that you're focusing on that this particular guide wants to learn more about and can help you with, then, you know, there will be a partnership between you and this guide. But your paths can go in separate ways. Maybe the job is done. And there's no need for that particular guide anymore. Maybe you grow in different directions and there's no need for that guide anymore. And so your relationship with your guides is similar to your relationship with humans, really. Some you know your whole life, and some you spend some time with and then you don't. All right. And my next question, actually, I've already started answering it, which is, are there different types of guides? And you mentioned this at the beginning too, Corey. Yeah, because you can think of, there are like specialist guides and generalist guides, guides who have a particular purpose. And so some guides will focus on healing. So I have specific healing guides that I work with. And in actual fact, I've found through my own experience over the last 25 years or so, I've had multiple healing guides. You know, they come and they go. And it depends what I'm learning about, what I'm focusing on, what kind of people I'm helping, what state the world is in. I've had, I couldn't even count how many different healing guides I've had, actually. And then as I've evolved and I've become a more powerful healer, then I'm working with more powerful guides. So my main healing guide at the moment is more like a galactic being who works a lot with light technologies. And I have some other guides who work with DNA activations. So, you know, it just depends. And then there are some guides that really love to work on manifestation and manifesting things.
Yeah. This guide is telling you it's time for a break.
Oh, okay. Well, that sounds good. Let's have a break. Okay. So listeners, you've been tuning in to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie and with Corey. And we'll be back after these messages. Welcome back, listeners. You are tuning in to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie and Corey.
That's me.
Tonight's topic has been all about spirit guides, and it's been my top 10 questions about spirit guides. Before the break, we were talking about different types of guides, you know, who have different focuses. And some guides might like to focus on healing or manifestation or helping people develop their psychic abilities and their intuition. Or
one of the ones that people are quite familiar with when they're in this circle are parking angels or parking guides.
Parking guides.
Yeah, I have one. Yeah. It's I never have a problem finding a parking space, even when I'm downtown, because my parking angel always finds me a parking spot.
Yeah, it's a really fun game to play. finding a parking spot like that. It's a really innocent and simple way of really demonstrating to yourself the power of manifestation. Yeah, and I was just going to finish off that particular question by saying, and there are some guides whose focus is helping the entire planet or the entire species of humanity. So, yeah, there's lots of different types of guides. And next question, how can I meet my spirit guide? On one level, well, you already know them and you've already met them, they're your spirit guide. But consciously, how might I consciously be aware of my spirit guide? And sometimes things happen to people that like they might happen in a dream. They might meet up with a guide in a dream. Or there might be some signs that show up in physical reality. Like I heard that it's common for people who are focused on communicating with angels to have feathers floating into their life, which is funny to me because actually in reality angels don't have wings at all. That's a human projection, but that's how we think of them. So they can find ways of communicating with us through different signs and signals, and then of course through deliberate meditation. And I mean, I guess sometimes you can be in a group meditation, you might just be focusing on mantras or chanting, and because you get yourself into a heightened state of receptivity, you suddenly become aware of guides and energy beings. Or you can deliberately do deliberate kinds of meditation where that's your goal, which is what I teach people to do. All right. How can I communicate with my spirit guide?
That's a good one. A lot of people want to know that.
I'm going to give two answers. One is by developing your psychic abilities. And really what that does is it validates that you are communicating with your spirit guide, because you can see them, you can hear them, you can sense them, you know what the conversation is. But then I would always say also that they always hear you. You might not hear them, but they always hear you. So if you have something that you want to say to your guide, or just even ask them, reveal yourself, or, talk to me, or help me find an answer to this question, whether you're aware of your guides or not, they're aware of you always. And then they will, assist you with what you're asking about. But if you want to be able to be aware of them, develop your psychic abilities, because then you will be able to see them with your clairvoyance, hear them with your clairaudience, and know them with your knowingness and your claircognizance. Okay, and then the flip side of that question is, why can't I connect with my guides? Why I want this, and why isn't it happening?
That's interesting. You know what? I know I've met a lot of people who haven't connected with their guides. I met a lot of people who'd like to connect with the guides. So I don't think I've ever met anybody that couldn't connect with a guide.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
I have lots of people who come to me and want to and can't, and then I help them to do it.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that it's possible for everyone to do it, but some people are at the point in their experience where it's not happening and they're wondering why not. And it's really all of the same reasons that I would say to someone who says, why can't I tap into my psychic abilities? It could be that you're really busy focused on physical reality and physical life, that you don't have the bandwidth to or the quiet, the peace and quiet to turn within and to turn into those more subtle signals. If you're super busy all day and exhausted in the evening, it's not happening for you because of that busyness, and you might just need to set time aside for some quiet time, some peace and quiet for you to just focus on your inner spiritual life and spiritual world. And all the other dominant factors of being in a human body, the emotions, the the thought patterns, and all of that. And there can be things like beliefs, limiting beliefs. Say you were brought up in a family where talking to spirit guides was evil. You might be really afraid and block yourself, for example. So there can be lots of reasons why it's not happening, but there's no reason that's insurmountable.
That's interesting, because in a lot of religious areas, or in different religions, that you're absolutely right. It would be, no, you can't do that. You can't speak to your spirit guides because they don't exist, but yet they believe in angels and all kinds of other things that you pray, you do this, but yet spirit guides are a no-no.
Yeah, and it's really, for our human understanding, we like to categorize things and put them in boxes, and label them good or bad, when really it's just the cosmic consciousness in its different infinite expressions of itself.
Yeah. Sophie says that self-doubt from hearing your guides or not. So I think
that's the intellect, Sophie.
Yeah.
So what happens is we get the intuition, we get the insight, and then we immediately pass it through the intellectual mind, and the intellectual mind starts doubting, saying we imagined it, we made it up, it can't be true. And so what you have to do is you have to learn how to bypass the intellect, basically. The intellect is of the body. The intellect is of the body, and you are spirit. You are spirit. The intellect's the highest vibration of the body, but you have a much higher vibration than that. And all of your spiritual abilities, your psychic senses, have a higher vibration than that. And so, but we're so trained into our intellect, into our thinking brain, all our education systems get us to do that. It helps us in physical life, but it can be a limit when it comes to this spiritual stuff and this psychic stuff. Yes. So I got one more question on my list of 10. And that is, how can I tell the difference between a good spirit guide and a bad spirit guide? A positive entity that wants to support me versus some kind of negative entity that wants to trick me. And I can give you lots of answers to this. And one of them is develop your psychic abilities and so on and so forth. But I'm going to give you a little tip here. A little law of the psychic universe. If you're aware of an energy being and you think it might be your guide, the way to test it is this. Ask them 3 times the same question over and over again. Ask them if they serve the light, and if they're in alignment with God or source energy, whatever your word is for that. So are you in alignment with the light? Do you serve the light? Are you in alignment with God? Do you serve the light? Are you in alignment with God? Do you serve the light? Are you in alignment with God? If you ask that 3 times, they can't lie. They can't lie, and you will know at that point, because the being will sort of disappear and fizzle into the background, or it will become very obvious that that's not a beneficial being. If it is a beneficial being, it will be very obvious because they'll still be there, all bright and shiny and lovely.
So I have a question about that.
Good.
And I've heard that before many times, and in when I was deep in religion, it was I was told, if you get something that comes to visit you, like a visitation of any sort, ask the question, and that whoever or whatever comes to visit will not and cannot lie to you. So why is that? Why can spirit not lie?
That's a good question. And
I thought so.
And spirit can lie. Spirit can lie, and
they can deceive, but I don't think they can lie.
But in asking that question multiple times, then I'm going to go into trance a little bit to answer that question. And the thing that comes up to say to that is just looking at I mean, our world is full of lies and liars. There's not a single human walking around in a body that isn't a liar, that hasn't told a lie, whether it's a conscious lie or an unconscious lie. You know, we've got these physical bodies, and you know, we're not always open with the truth, and we're not always in touch with the truth. If you translated humanity into 1,000 years in the future, even 500 years in the future, where we become an evolved species, that means that we are using our psychic abilities all the time, that we've cleared all our crap, right? Because all of us, we're looking at the world through our own projections, through our own filters, through our own crap. And we believe lies about ourselves and about other people, and we feel the need, therefore, to hide things from ourselves and from others. If that wasn't the case, if we'd all healed ourselves and we were all using our intuitive gifts, there could not be such a thing as a lie, because everyone would see the truth all the time about everybody else. Like, each and every one of you carries all the information about you in your energy field. Okay? So you can tell a lie on the surface level of reality, on the physical level of reality, and fool people. But a really good psychic, you can't fool them, because they can tell that you're lying and they can see your energy. And so to answer your question, that's the first answer to your question, Corey, anyway. I'll see if anything else comes up. Yeah, so really, the outside of the body, in one sense, we might say that. But I want to look at this question as well when it comes to the astral plane, because it's possible on the astral plane for beings to show up not like themselves, and so I'm going to look at that as well. Yeah, we can cloak ourselves in a disguise, but when we take a spiritual focus, then the lies are evident and the pure truth of reality is evident. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Very good. So that is my top 10 list of questions about spirit guides, but I'm sure
list of
that
top
there are
10 questions, you mean?
10 questions. I'm sure that there are questions that I didn't think of to answer, and maybe some of the members of our audience have got their own questions about spirit guides.
Yes. Did we discuss how to connect with the spirit guide? Do you have a meditation for that, or?
I have, in one of my Akashic Adventures, which are these 2-hour workshops that are available on my website. There's one that gives you 3 meditation experiences to meet your guides, and one of them is to meet an angel, one of them is to meet an ascended master, I think, and the other one is to meet an animal guide. So that's a really good workshop, and it's inexpensive, and that's on my website, I think, under workshops. And I have another meditation. If I'm training someone to communicate with their spirit guide, then I have another meditation that I take them through, but I train them a little bit in their clairvoyance first, and I train them a little bit in their energy field first. But basically what we do is we have the healing guide stand in front of them at the edge of their energy field.
So that's a question that Sophie wants to know. Do you need to be clairvoyant or clairsentient to hear your guides?
Okay, the short answer to that is no, but let me explain. Clairvoyant is the ability to see as spirit. So if you want to see your guides, you develop your clairvoyance. Clairsentience means clear feeling. It has to do with the emotions and body-spirit communication. Clairaudience is the ability to hear your guides. So there's different ways you can communicate with your guides. If you develop your clairaudience, you can hear them as spirit. If you develop your clairvoyance, you can see them as spirit.
Yes, but we all have psychic abilities, so everybody can essentially see their guides or hear their guides.
Communicate with their guides.
Yes.
Yeah. But I would say, I mean, okay, let me just qualify that Sophie's question a little bit. There are lots of examples. I'm sure if you go Googling on the internet, you can find lots of examples of people who are talking about physical signs that appear in their life that mean their guides are talking to them. I use that example of people who want their angels to communicate with them, and then they see a feather show up in their reality. So we could say that's a kind of communication, but it's a communication on the physical level. And it's so much richer experience to learn to communicate with them on a spiritual level. The other example that's really common is people seeing sequences of numbers. And, you know, again, if you Google, what does it mean if I see 11111 or 555, then a lot of people will say, well, that's your guides who are talking to you. I see those really as awakening codes, triggers that you are in the process of a spiritual awakening. Well, listeners, you've been tuning in to Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie and with Corey. It's time for another break. We will be back shortly after these messages. Welcome back, listeners. This is Unlocking Your Truth with Dr. Leslie and with Corey. This evening, we've been talking about spirit guides. And it's the time in the show where we like to open up to our listeners' questions. So if you have a question and you are watching the live stream, you can post your question now in the comments box. If you're listening in any other fashion, you can email info@drlesliephillips.com. And Corey's there managing all the questions.
So I have a question from James, and James says, why do I seem to only see and hear my guides in times of extreme danger or extreme trauma?
That's a really good question, James.
We're going to have another one from Sophie afterwards.
Yeah, I'll take a look at that question. I'm going to just share an anecdotal experience of my own, though.
Oh, boy.
Because when years ago, probably I'm aging myself here, but you know, maybe even as long as 30 years ago, I injured my back so badly that I couldn't walk so I was sort of like lying in bed for about 3 weeks. And during that time, I kept hearing this loud music, and it was the most beautiful music. And it was the music of the angelic realm. It was the music of the spheres. And it was all this angels comforting me that I was going to be all right. And when I did walk again, and I would walk, like say I'd walk to the supermarket, and then I'd be like, oh my God, I can't get back. The music would start playing and it would encourage me that I could walk back. So I know exactly what you're talking about, James. And it's funny, I've never really asked that question, even though I've experienced it myself. So I'm going to look at that for you. Why you only seem to hear your guides in extreme trauma and stress. And one of the things that I'm getting as an answer to that has to do with what's going on in our nervous system. Because it just seems, you know, I often talk about, well, to tune in as spirit, you need to shut down all the distractions. In a time of stress, sometimes what can happen is our energy and our focus becomes very narrow. So that's one reason why it can happen. And the other reason is I think that there's a really strong cry for help in those kinds of times. Let me see what else. James, do you want to share an example of something that happened to you? And we can look at that specifically. I'm going to see if I can see anything else about you and your particular question. Yeah, it seems like sometimes in extreme, it's like the body's not behaving in the same way it normally does. The brain's not behaving in the same way it normally does. The nervous system's not behaving in the same. And it's almost like a short circuit that then allows a gap for a different perception of reality to happen. That's what's coming up for me to say to that.
Well, James hasn't gotten back with an example, but Sophie has a question. We'll wait for James.
Sure.
Our angels, we have covered this, but I think she came in a little late. Are angels different from spirit guides and soul family in parentheses?
So soul, family, angels, and spirit guides. Okay. So angels are non-physical beings who are on a separate evolutionary path to what we might label as certain other types of spirit guides, and I'll explain what I mean in a moment. So angels haven't had a physical body. They're evolving in a different way than the beings who are choosing to have a physical body. But they are supporting the evolution and the expansion of the cosmic consciousness. And the ones who focus here with us on Earth have a particular focus on helping humanity as well. Spirit guides, ascended masters, spirit guides are often beings who have had a physical body, but then have evolved to the point beyond needing to be, and they've made a decision. They've had a level of spiritual awakening and made a decision that they're going to support humanity from the perspective of spirit, as opposed to necessarily being in a physical body. Although there are ones in a physical body as well. Like an ascended master can ascend in his physical body and be assisting people as a guide while they have a body. So I would distinguish between angels and maybe a lot of other spirit guides just by saying it's a different evolutionary path. One's focused on having a body and the other one hasn't. And then soul family is a different thing altogether. So I think of your soul family as the group of souls that are most closely connected to you, and that the people in your soul, members of your soul group, are often creating their physical bodies in the world at the same time that you are. So you're traveling through reality together. You're creating physical bodies together. You know, you knew each other in the Renaissance. You knew each other in ancient Rome. You know each other today, for example. That's more like, I think of the soul family as a group of closely connected souls who are helping each other in their evolvement. And yes, maybe you could say that they're acting as guides for one another.
We have an email question that flows with this, and this is from a lady, and she says, children and the spiritual world. She says, this is a personal issue she's had. I believe something in my home is terrorizing my 3-year-old son, and he often complains of shadows. I've even recorded a video of 2 orbs seeming to attack or pick at him in the middle of the night, and she records that on her baby monitor.
Okay, so I will look at that. I think that's a really good question, and I think we might do an entire show about children in the spiritual world. Mm-hmm. We've only ever done one show on children before, and so I think that might be a really good idea, but I will take a look for this lady and take a look at what's happening with her 3-year-old son. It does look to me like there's an energy being, actually. And it does have this kind of shadowy aspect to it. Let me see if I can see what it is. It looks like an annoying being, but the big picture is it's teaching him about to stand in his own power. And it's teaching him about his own power. And, you know, one thing we can say about a being like that is, if that being had enough power to have a body, it would have a body, right? And we're not talking about angels now, we're talking about these low level, low power, low energy entities that feed off other people, like these parasitic entities. So I'm seeing that the being itself is actually nothing to be worried about, but it's just, it is sort of like shadowy and in the shadows, but it's an opportunity to, I guess, talk to your son about how brave he is, how courageous he is, how powerful he is, how strong he is, and how much light he has, because he has a lot of light, and this being is just like a little dark shadow. So he's learning how to be in charge of his energy and step into his power, and he's learning how he doesn't need to be afraid of these things. And then the orbs that you're talking about, that's an interesting one too. So might have to take a moment to just be a little bit quiet and look at this. It's still on the same theme of power. And I am seeing these things affecting him at the third chakra and the crown chakra. And it's relating to either being in your power or being manipulated and giving away your power. So they're attempting to manipulate him. They're attempting to take a ride on his energy. And his task, challenge, purpose is to overcome that, to transcend that, to realize his own power. Yeah. And I'm just looking to see the source of this and why this is happening. I mean, it's obviously something that he came into this lifetime wanting to work on. It looks like there might be some past life connection as well. So I would just say, like, to this lady, if she wants a bit more information, she can always set up a time to talk at length about it, and we can go into it more deeply.
Oh, good. That's wonderful. And we're going to do a show about this, so there'll be more about that.
Yeah, I think we should do a show about it.
One of the things that came to my mind just now is when we talk about the Vaca Realm, like spirits and things like that. I was reading once about the different types of spirits, little spirit, children like elves and things. And there's some, I won't say nasty, but some things that you don't want to invite into your life in that realm. Are you aware of that?
I
forget which one. There's one or two that this lady was talking about, and says they can cause a little bit of grief in your life. Not harmful, just
I mean,
breaking things.
I once had a little in a previous relationship I had the partner I had invited, it's kind of like a house elf, like gremlin thing, to live in our house, and I don't know, because for some reason he liked it there, but it was a little mischievous thing, and I just got rid of it. And I mean, I didn't know that he'd invited it in until I said, I've seen this thing and I've got rid of it. And he's like, oh, well, that was but But the thing to be aware of is there are only things. There's nothing to be afraid of. If we know our own power, if we realize our own power, if we're in our own power, then there's nothing to be afraid of. It's only when we have a belief that there are these nasty things out there that can do something to us, and they can do something to me because I'm not as powerful. It's got some edge over me. And, if something's being mischievous, it isn't in alignment with the light. It's not behaving in it's out of alignment. And, the more you're in alignment and the more you're in your power, the less that you have to worry about from anything like that.
But it's not, I know that you do entity removals with negative energies that people have, dark energies, but it's not, you're not going to see exorcist type, head spinning around and things on people.
I did an entity clearing this morning, and the ones I see most of lately are reptilian beings. And we were talking about at the beginning of the show how there are lots of benevolent galactic beings who are here to help us and support us, but there are some that are not. And I'm finding like every stage that the planet vibration goes up, things are coming out and up to be released. And so there's been lots of people offloading connections with reptilian beings.
That's interesting. Reptilian beings, as in reptilians, like the race, or
yeah, as in reptilian races of beings.
As in the Queen of England, and
no.
Sorry, I couldn't resist that one.
I don't know that I subscribe to all of David Icke's stuff.
No. It's interesting when you get, but back to, I guess, the base topic that we're talking about, spirit guides. Spirit guides, I had a friend of mine years ago, and she used to have Jesus Christ come and sit on her bed at night and be in the room, and it was only in her bedroom. He wouldn't go in anywhere else in the house. So she used to sleep on the couch because she could not sleep while he was there, because it was such a bright and energetic thing. But like I told her, I said, you've got to be inviting him in, because if you're not inviting him in, he's not going to show up.
I always meet him on a park bench.
I meet him at the beach.
Yeah. So
he laughs at me. Yeah, he does. He laughs at me. He's very succinct with me whenever I ask him for anything. Like, I'll go into a meditation and I'll just ask, and he shows up on the beach. He walks towards me on the beach wearing white robes, comes up, and he gives me an answer, boom, straight off, like, that's the answer, now go away.
And maybe that's one thing that we should talk about. We've talked about ascended masters, but they are at the level of service that they are available to the whole of humanity, and we can each have our personal relationship with them. So Corey can be talking to Jesus at the same time as I'm talking to Jesus, at the same time as everyone else is having their own private conversation.
No time and space.
Ascended master being.
Yeah, no time and space in that.
And they don't belong to particular religions, even though we've associated them with. They're all available to everyone, right? Muhammad, Buddha, Jesus, all the others.
Great show, Dr. Leslie. Unfortunately, it's time to say goodnight.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for those of you who joined us for unlocking your truth this evening. And we're back on schedule. We're here every Tuesday from 7 to 8 Pacific time on 101.7 FM and live streaming on our Awaken Your Psychic Abilities Facebook group. We'll see you next Tuesday at 7 Pacific time.
Thank you for joining us. You've been listening to another Unlocking Your Truth podcast by Dr. Leslie Phillips. For more information, go to our website at drlesley PHILLIPS.com. That's drlesliephillips.com, where you can ask questions or send her an email, and there's many free gifts on there for you as well. You can also find the questions that were asked during this show at the website on our free card reading podcast page, where you'll find a full list of them. Come back again